my wife, Emily, has started rewriting our memories. At breakfast one morning, she was talking about her master's program. That time was so hard. I was in the library alone every night until after midnight. My hand froze around my coffee mug. That's when we met, during our master's. I walked her back from the library to her dorm every single night, down that dark stretch of road. On Wednesday, she was on the phone with her best friend. Those years before I got married were incredibly lonely, like I was living in a vacuum. I was fixing the faucet. The wrench slipped from my hand and clanged into the sink. Before we got married, we adopted our first dog. We went hiking every weekend. Our friends used to joke that we were conjoined twins. The changes were gradual. She used to talk about our first kiss in Central Park. Now it's just a warm evening somewhere. But it was freezing that night. She wore my gloves, and the tip of her nose was bright red from the cold. When I mentioned that detail, she blinked. Really? I don't remember. The real break came on our anniversary. She was flipping through old photos and stopped at one taken just before sunset in Venice. Here, she said, her voice soft. This was the first time I felt completely understood. I took that photo. She's the only one in the frame, but we had just had a huge fight. I stood under the bridge smoking for half an hour before I came back and took that picture. I was right behind the camera, I said. Emily turned to me, a flicker of blankness in her eyes. Oh right, she said with a smile. You were there too. It wasn't sarcasm. It wasn't provocation. It was a genuine correction. In her version of the story, I'd gone from the lead role to part of the crew. The next day, I overheard her on the phone with her lover. The tone in her voice was one I knew well, light and lilting, the way she sounded on our honeymoon. Remember, she said, that year I got stuck in a cafe during the rainstorm and you came to get me? That was me. 2017. Hurricane warning. I waded through half the flooded city to pick her up. Now someone else was the hero. I started testing it. I brought up the first apartment we rented. That agent totally screwed us over. She nodded. Yeah, I had to deal with him alone for 3 rounds. In reality, I handled it. She was on a business trip. I mentioned her hospital stay for surgery. That head nurse was brutal. She frowned. I got through all those tests by myself. I was there for 5 full days, sleeping in a folding chair. I brought up her father's funeral. This time I didn't say anything. She offered it on her own. I got through that time all by myself. My mother later called to ask why I hadn't gone to the funeral. I told her I had. I just wasn't in my wife's memory of it. The lover's name was David. I'd seen him once at the grocery store. Young, too much hair gel. The way he looked at Emily was full of possession, like he'd really walked beside her for the past 10 years. He didn't know he was acting from my script. The last time was on our anniversary. Emily made steak and started talking about the proposal. That day at the beach, she said, her eyes shining. I suddenly wasn't afraid of the future anymore. I put down my knife and fork. It was raining that day, I said. We were in our rented apartment eating takeout. An old movie was playing on TV. When you said yes, the pizza box was still open. She froze. The knife scraped sharply across the plate. You remember now? She asked at last. It's not that I remember, I said. It's that I never forgot. I slept in the guest room that night. Around midnight I heard her on the phone in the study. Voice low. I need you to be part of that memory. Otherwise none of it makes sense. That's when I realized this wasn't an affair. It was murder. Murdering the man who had spent 10 years beside her, and replacing him with a substitute. The lawyer moved faster than I expected. Emily's hand was steady when she signed the papers. This is for the best, she said. We've been on different paths for a long time. We were never on different paths, I said. You just redrew the map. David left her 3 months later. A friend told me he complained that Emily kept insisting he remember things that never even happened. He wanted the thrill of an affair, not the lead role in a rewritten epic. Last week, Emily emailed me. She said she wanted to talk about the parts that really happened. I didn't reply. She treats memory like an editable document, using find and replace to delete me. Now the file's corrupted, and she's realizing the backups are gone too. The house is sold. I went back one last time to clear out the garage and found a note at the bottom of an old suitcase. Emily's handwriting, dated 2014. Today Mark stayed with me in the ER for 6 hours. He said if he had 1,000 do-overs, he'd choose me every time. I left the note on the kitchen counter. As I closed the door, I found myself thinking she's probably telling David, or whoever comes next by now, that the note marks some grand, pivotal moment. But I'll remember the real version. She just had food poisoning. I was reading a magazine. She said she was thirsty, and I handed her a glass of water. Utterly ordinary. And completely true.